Welcome to this week's lesson entitled Ruth and Esther. Our memory text is coming from Esther chapter 5 verse 2, which says, "So it was when the king saw Queen Esther standing in the court, that she found favor in his sight, and the king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. Then Esther went near and touched the top of the scepter." This week we continue to explore stories that prefigure last-day events. By using real-life events and people, God helps us to see things from His perspective and helps us understand how to interpret the prophecies that come later, which are given to help strengthen our faith. Our attention turns to two important women whose stories have touched the hearts of countless generations, Ruth and Esther. One is a dispossessed widow who finds hope after meeting the kindly Boaz, her kinsman redeemer. Their marriage has become a favorite love story for Christians because of the way it reflects Christ's love for us. The other is a young girl living in a foreign land who becomes aware of a plot to destroy her people and finds herself thrust onto the main stage in the drama that unfolds to save them. In prophecy, of course, a woman is a powerful symbol for God's church, shedding much light on how God regards His people. Let's look at the biblical accounts of these two women whose life circumstances have been immortalized in the Word of God, and seek to draw whatever lessons we can from their experiences. Sunday, famine in the house of bread. Critics of the Christian faith have often pointed to the brutal reality of living in this world as evidence that A, God does not exist, B, He is powerless to intervene when bad things happen, or C, He doesn't care when we hurt. Many of the stories of the Bible, however, provide abundant evidence that none of these assumptions are correct. True, God is allowing the human race to reap the consequences of rebellion against Him. But without violating our free will, He is always present, always working in human history, always moving us toward the ultimate resolution of the problems of sin and suffering. The story of Ruth provides one such example. Read Ruth chapter 1, verses 1 to 5. What hardships fell on Naomi and Ruth, and what caused them? How does this reflect the situation that the entire human race now faces? There is irony to be found in the opening statement of this story. There was a famine that affected Bethlehem, a town whose name means house of bread. One is reminded of the abundance of Eden, where God told Adam and Eve, "Of every tree of the garden you may freely eat." Genesis chapter 2, verse 16. The human race began its existence in abundance, under the care of a generous creator, but then exchanged its role as caretakers of creation for the slavery of sin. "In the sweat of your face you shall eat bread till you return to the ground," God told Adam. Genesis chapter 3, verse 19. Like Naomi, we have been dispossessed from the inheritance that God originally planned for us to have, and our lives have become a hardship. Eden was given as a gift, but not unconditionally. Humans were free to rebel, but that would mean they would have to take responsibility for their own well-being. Originally, we were meant to subdue the whole unfallen world under God's blessing, but now we are faced with the task of subduing a fallen one. Selfish human beings competing for scarce resources leads to much heartache and suffering. The tragedy is unspeakable. The earth still produces abundantly, a powerful testimony to God's love. But between human greed and the ravages of sin, the world at times seems to subdue us more than we subdue it. One day, however, all this will end. Monday, Ruth and Boaz. Naomi asked that her name be changed to Mara because of the bitterness that had fallen over her life. Our relationship with our Creator has been irreparably damaged by sin, forcing us into spiritual poverty. Our prospects are dim, and we spend our lives gleaning what we can from the edges of the field, living on the scraps of joy that can still be found in a broken world. But it all changes the moment we make a remarkable discovery. God has not forgotten us. Read Ruth chapter 2, verses 5 through 20. Why is this such a pivotal moment in the story? Why do you think Naomi's discovery of the benefactor's identity was such good news? Naomi could not take possession of her husband Elimelech's land without obtaining assistance from her husband's family. She hopes that Ruth can marry a close relative of her deceased husband and bear a child in Elimelech's name. God had made provision in Israel for individuals to reclaim their inheritance in the Promised Land. A close relative was needed to redeem Elimelech's inheritance. Boaz was not just a kind farmer, he was a kinsman of Elimelech who could redeem the land. The discovery that Boaz was not only kind-hearted and generous, but a relative, was the best possible news. The poverty in which these two women existed did not have to last forever. Christians have long understood Boaz to be a type of Christ, who is not only our creator, but chose to become our kinsman, a real flesh-and-blood human being, one of the reasons why, again and again, he called himself the Son of Man. Far too many people think of God in harsh terms. Perhaps he will let us into heaven if we check all the correct boxes on a moral inventory, but he will do so grudgingly because we have scraped by on a technicality. The picture of Christ revealed in Boaz completely displaces such notions. God not only notices us, but in spite of our deep spiritual poverty, he wants us as his bride. Try to wrap your mind around not only the Creator's becoming part of his own creation, but then dying for it. How should this astonishing truth impact how we view our own existence? Tuesday, Boaz as Redeemer. Boaz falls deeply in love with Ruth and wishes to marry her, but there is a significant barrier. There is a closer relative who also has a claim on the woman and the land. If we consider Boaz to be a type of Christ, this situation may reveal an issue at stake in the great controversy. Christ loves us, but there is a closer relative who also has a claim: Satan. What do the following passages reveal about Satan's claim on humanity? When Satan appeared in the heavenly council, he told God that he had been going to and fro in the earth. And when God asked him if he had noticed the righteous Job, Satan laid claim to him as one of his own, suggesting that Job's heart did not really belong to God. That is, he really follows you only because you are good to him. Stop being good to him and see who truly has Job's allegiance. In Jude, we see a brief reference to a story that was well known in Israel. After Moses had been buried by God, he was later resurrected. Though we are not privy to the details, the text itself, which says that they disputed over the body of Moses, implies that Satan was making some kind of claim on it. For the first time, Christ was about to give life to the dead. As the Prince of Life and the Shining Ones approached the grave, Satan was alarmed for his supremacy. With his evil angels, he stood to dispute an invasion of the territory that he claimed as his own. He boasted that the servant of God had become his prisoner. He declared that even Moses was not able to keep the law of God, that he had taken to himself the glory due to Jehovah, the very sin which had caused Satan's banishment from heaven, and by transgression had come under the dominion of Satan. Obviously, Christ refuted Satan's claim, and Moses was resurrected. In Ruth chapter 4, verses 1 through 12, Boaz travels to the gate of Bethlehem, the town where Christ would enter our world as our close relative. The elders gather, and finally a sandal, a symbol of ownership, is exchanged. The gate of a village is where cases were decided. This is a type of judgment scene. It reflects the judgment scene of Daniel chapter 7, verses 13, 14, 22, 26 and 27. We must not miss this critical aspect of judgment. Judgment is in favor of the saints, but only because Christ paid the price for us, just as Boaz did for his bride. Wednesday, Haman and Satan. In the story of Esther, we meet Haman, who is hungry for position and power. He is given a great degree of prominence in the empire, above all the other princes. If we read Ezekiel chapter 28, verses 11 through 15, and Isaiah chapter 14, verses 12 through 15, about Lucifer, we can find some parallels with Haman, an evil antagonist to God's chosen people, who refuses to bow to God's supremacy. Satan's overarching intentions are revealed in the story of the temptation of Christ, where he takes Jesus to a high place to show him the kingdoms of the world. Christ, as we have seen, came to redeem the world and claim it as his own, and he did it as one of us. Jesus is the kinsman redeemer, and the price he paid to redeem the world was exceedingly high. In the book of Revelation, we see that Satan's lust for power and worship brings this world to its final crisis. His deceptions convince the world to marvel and follow the beast, except for notable exceptions who refuse to worship him. With these people, he resorts to force. Haman notices that Mordecai, one of God's chosen people, would not defer to him or acknowledge what he believed to be his right to worship. He is filled with wrath, and he becomes determined to eliminate all of Mordecai's people from the face of the earth. Read Esther chapter 3, verses 1 through 14, Revelation chapter 12, verses 14 through 17, and Revelation chapter 13, verse 15. What parallels do you find between these passages? How is John's description of God's remnant church like Haman's description of God's people? The devil has laid claim to this world, but the presence of people who stay loyal to God, who keep his commandments, disproves his claim of complete supremacy. When the Sabbath shall become the special point of controversy throughout Christendom, the persistent refusal of a small minority to yield to the popular demand will make them objects of universal execration. Think about the small things that test your faith now. If you compromise on them, the small things, how will you do when the big test comes? Thursday. For such a time as this. There is an unfortunate tendency among some Christians to dwell on the hard things of Bible prophecy. We see that trying times lie ahead, and the study of prophecy can become fear-based, focusing on hardship instead of the promised resolution to the story. While God does not sugarcoat the future, and he is honest about the events that will transpire between now and the close of the great controversy, it is important always to read the story to the end. There is a general pattern in prophecy in which God reveals the truth about the mess created by our human rebellion, and he shows us the consequences. But then he always holds out hope. Some have looked at the predictions of a final crisis, the time of Jacob's trouble, with fear and trembling. Undoubtedly, the closing moments will not be easy ones for God's people. But just as the prediction of hard times is reliable, so is the promise of deliverance. In Revelation chapter 12, the devil pursues Christ's bride with hateful vengeance, but God intervenes to save her. The story of Esther also has a beautiful queen playing a central role in the drama, and God uses her powerfully to save his people. Read Esther chapter 4, verses 13 and 14, Esther chapter 5, verses 1 through 3, and Esther chapter 9, verses 20 through 28. What lessons can we draw from these passages regarding our plight in the closing moments of Earth's history? God raised up his remnant church for a specific moment in history. As the 1,260 days of the Dark Ages drew to a close, God brought his bride out of hiding to carry his final message of mercy, the three angels' messages, to the world. We are here for such a time as this. Esther discovered she was not alone in facing the persecution being unleashed on her people by Haman. She found favor from the king, and her people were ultimately delivered. Neither are we alone as we enter the final moments of Earth's history. The king is on our side, and God's people will be delivered as well. In this final chapter, we reflect on the timeless lessons from Ruth and Esther. Both of these remarkable women faced incredible challenges and yet displayed unwavering faith and courage. Ruth, through her loyalty and kindness, found redemption and a future filled with hope. Esther, with her bravery and wisdom, saved her people from annihilation. Their stories remind us that no matter the obstacles, we can find strength in our faith and purpose in our actions. As we navigate our own lives, let us apply these lessons through prayer and action, trusting that we are here for such a time as this. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe to our channel for more inspiring content. Thank you for watching.